I'd like to welcome all my guests, starting with Major General retired Rajan Kochar. He's a defense expert. Group Captain retired V.N. Shah, defense expert also. And we also have Major Mohammed Ali Shah, who's also joining us on the broadcast. I'd like to thank all of you gentlemen for joining us on NewsX. So Major Mohammed Ali Shah, just to take this forward, because we've limited time in the conversation, I'm just trying to include everyone. Major Mohammed Shah, I think Group Captain Shah has answered the part on the litigation. If you could just elaborate on the role which the IAF will play and how MEA and IAF will work in tandem to evacuate these students at the earliest.
See, very good question by you, and through this question I'm sure I'll be able to answer a lot of young minds, and Group Captain Shah has very clearly mentioned it. Yes, it is any aircraft. Yesterday we saw it. Air India flight which had to return, on its way to Ukraine, had to return from Iran, in fact, for that matter. It couldn't go through. So they have blocked the air spaces. And now when we have the intervention of the Air Force, it is even, I would say it would be even a more dangerous sign because of two reasons. One is already the armored vehicles over there have, I'm talking about ground right now, they have put Z symbols to avoid friendly fire. And when we talk about World War, and we see an Air Force aircraft flying, not even a civil aviation, mind you, an aircraft. So Group Captain Shah has very clearly said, it is liable to get shot down there. Why would anyone want to, in fact, it's just that, in fact, so we are, at the same time, we are very, very concerned about our students over there. We are very concerned about every single citizen who's stuck in Ukraine. But if we not use Josh but Hosh, if we think sensibly. And okay, another thing is, yesterday I was on a panel with some students and they were saying that, we are just 70 kilometers from Poland right now. So we can go there by road, and then from there the Indian government can make arrangements for us to be evacuated by to India. I said, no, stay put where you are. You have no guarantee. You step out, forget about 70 kilometers by 7 inches. And you can be, you never know when there can be an air attack, when there can be a ballistic missile being fired at you. You never know what can happen. So if you are underground shelters, though they are giving priority to their own country people who have those underground shelters, but that is the safest bet. Now when we talk about the role of Air Force, well, unfortunately, we cannot really, the hands are tied. One cannot really do much in this case.
Yeah.
One can't do much. It will be too much to expect from. And which we have, our Air Force has always been there, be it Afghanistan, be it anywhere, to always evacuate our citizens safely and soundly. But here, in this case, it's all tied down. It's all, we are bound by certain rules and regulations and by certain compulsion for that matter.
Yeah, and also today says we've been left alone by the NATO. As a defense expert, when you compare the military might of Russia with Ukraine, we all know who is the big brother in this fight. Without NATO actually putting foot soldiers on ground, Russia barely stands a chance to fight, Ukraine, barely stands a chance to fight Russia, isn't it? Colonel Shivdan Singh, can you unmute yourself? All right, Major Mohammed Ali Shah, would you like to take this question, sir? Without the support of NATO forces, Ukraine barely stands a chance, and we have more news coming in that Russian forces are just about 20-30 kilometers away from Kyiv.
Absolutely, Meenakshi. The strategy that Russia has used, they first use information warfare, psychological warfare, web warfare, that's the cyber warfare. They use every kind of warfare possible, and then in a very mechanized way, they attack through land, sea and air very, very tactfully. Now you see they came from Crimea through the sea, through the Black Sea, they came through the land, they launched air attacks, and now they, as you rightly said, they are just about 30 kilometers away from Kyiv. Now which means, which is the center of gravity. The president, the prime minister, the top leadership of the entire state of the country stays there. Everyone is there. So it's like doing, for example, it's like doing salami slicing. The moment you do salami slicing, you catch it by the neck straight away. You catch it where it matters. That's exactly the strategy what Russia has done right now. And let me tell you, yes, you are right. Ukraine has militarily power. No way they stand nowhere close to the might that Russia has got.
Yeah.
It used to be a superpower at one time. And they obviously felt left out. They felt like, oh, you can't just ignore us like this. And yes, Russia is going to catch them by the neck, and ultimately, what will happen? See, thereafter, what my prediction goes, is going to be a power and a game of greed. It will not end there. It will go on. Russia will, they have tasted blood. Let's accept it. They have tasted blood now. It happened in 2008 with Georgia, 2014 with Crimea. Now they're doing it with Ukraine. Slowly and gradually, they will want to invade further and further and further. They would get thirsty and greedy for power as well, and for resources as well. So it will not just end here. And yes, you are right. Ukraine has no chance militarily, when they might have the best of guerrilla warfare, but so what? Regarding might, they are nothing compared to what Russia has not even used, I would say, 5% of their might so far, Meenakshi.
Is this Major General Rajan Kochar? Would you like to say something, sir?
Yes. See, Major Shah has brought out the psyche how Putin actually thinks.
To fulfill its expansionist policies. Right, fair point, sir. But Major Mohammed Shah, since we are discussing the impact of the Russia-Ukraine war vis-a-vis Pakistan and China, the bigger fear in Indian minds right now, and a very valid one, is that China can use this opportunity for salami slices. China can use this opportunity to fulfill its nefarious plans in Taiwan, considering that the world's attention has now shifted from China to Russia. Interestingly, Quad, which had come together to take on China, all three Quad partners today are busy giving statements, are busy threatening, are busy sanctioning Russia.
Absolutely, and I totally go with the point of view of Ambassador Mukherjee. I think she was bang on there, and right now, who will gain from it? Ultimately, it's going to be China in both the ways, because the attention has been shifted from the Indo-Pacific, the South China Sea, to the west, towards Europe and towards Russia and Ukraine. In fact, also when more sanctions are going to be imposed on Russia, as the US is saying, well, let me tell you, at the end of the day, Russia will open its trade routes, its entire economics from China. So who will benefit ultimately is going to be China. And Pakistan, already a sidekick to China, has landed up there yesterday. Imran Khan landed up in Russia yesterday and met Vladimir Putin. And what does that convey? It's open to the entire world. At the same time, while all this is going on, US at the same time has been saying for a long time that if you harm Ukraine, we will harm you. But I want to ask, where are the NATO nations, where are the allies, where are the forces when Russia was attacked Ukraine military forces yesterday? Already the Baltic states like the Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia, they have all received the US aid, all right, the military troops and the equipment, all right. But then at the end of the day, is it only going to be flexing of muscles from their side, or they will actually come out and bail Ukraine out from there? Already Ukraine lost control of Chernobyl nuclear site. The workers over there, the staff, have been taken hostage. The same place where the 1986 disaster happened. Now, when this entire crisis is going on, UN at the same time has announced a huge sum of money as aid to Ukraine. They have announced a huge sum of money of, I think it was $20 million if I'm not mistaken. So while all this is going on, ultimately the benefactor, the person who's going to, the nation who's going to benefit all this is going to be China. And let me tell you, the most dangerous thing will be not just China trying to do salami slicing into us. Also, when China will decide to actually invade into Taiwan, they would feel it's the right time. And why also they will get influenced is, I see why Russia decided to invade Ukraine right now. They could have done that way back in 2008, 2014 when they did the same thing with Georgia or with Crimea. I will tell you why. Because Russia perceives that perhaps the US military, the US leadership and the UK leadership right now is weak. So at the right time they fell. And that is exactly what China is going. Both of them are learning from each other. Like there was information warfare used, there was psychological warfare used, there was cyber warfare used. Now China is already providing cover fire by giving biological warfare to the world, in fact. So yes, ultimately, as you said rightly, Meenakshi, China is going to emerge as the most benefiting nation out of all this that's going on in the world.
Yeah, Major Mohammed Shah, if you could just take this for us, considering we are seeing the strong statements coming from the side of Ukraine's president saying that some pro-Russian groups have entered Kyiv. Other reports coming in of how US claims that, Russia has started now attacking 20-30 kilometers from Kyiv. Do you still see any place for talks, or do you think it's just too late for talks?
too late, and anything to get peace. And though yes, a lot of damage has been done, and I really hope and I wish this could not have taken place. But yes, a talk, that's the only solution, because bullets would not lead to anywhere. Bloodshed, further bloodshed, further bloodshed. In March 2014, when the Ukrainian revolution took place, at that time again, there was much talk about the two Donbass regions, Donetsk and Luhansk, to be separated. But then now, when Vladimir Putin gave them recognition now, and he identified them, and that is when what angered the entire world community. In fact, Japan, for that matter, which is also an important member of Quad, we are not actually we are not confusing a lot of issues. We are actually joining the dots for everything else, and hoping and expecting that it does not lead to a third world war, because Japan also imposed sanctions on the two recognized nations that they will not give visas, and whatever little way that it's possible, everyone is chipping in their little way. UK imposed sanctions, US imposed sanctions, and now India, yes, is on a very, very tricky, very, very precarious situation. We do not believe in taking sides. We are very, very neutral. We only propagate peace. We are a peace-loving nation. So yes, definitely there is certainly a room for talks, and it's never too late. It is.
Yes, and we'll have to wait and watch, sir, if India plays peacemaker. Major Mohammed Shah is a defense expert, so do you see a possibility of NATO forces actually sending soldiers on ground or directly getting involved in conventional warfare? To be fair to Russia as well, Russia till now, even though skepticism over Russia's claim prevails, considering, you know, we know what had happened in Crimea and of course what's happening in Ukraine right now, but till date Russia claims that we are not interested in invading Ukraine, we only want to destroy their military and air bases.
Well, very good question, Meenakshi. You know, I think that, you know, firstly, I agree with Captain Jha when he says that, you know, Crimea has been taken by Russia and they can forget about it. And the same thing, the naval chief of the naval staff of the Germany, he had come to India and he had said that on the behest of IDSA invitation, he said the same thing. And he said, between you and me, I'm telling very informally, that Russia will not invade into Ukraine, because they're not interested in an invasion. They were not interested in the crude oil and the minerals and their national, no, they were not, or the land, no. They were only thinking of a very simple demand. They had drawn the red line in 2008 with Georgia, where in 2014 they attacked Crimea. Now they actually went in, and they are just about 20 kilometers, that's hardly, and as we talk, I'm sure they will move even closer. So most certainly their only demand was that their sovereignty should be protected, because at the same again, Vladimir Zelensky, the president of Ukraine, should have been sensible enough not to, in fact, he got taken away by the talks of US. You don't, yeah, here to protect you, no one touch you. He should have been self-reliant on himself. Now, do we see NATO actually stepping in? Good question. Because if NATO steps in, it's going to be again a very, very precarious situation for the world. And I see China will go ahead and invade Taiwan. Here the NATO countries will be fighting. And that can actually result in a lot of mockery, a lot of hodgepodge. And that one can also say would be like, in a way, a third world war. But at the same time, if we say, is India a stakeholder? Well, I would say India is not, but India has already been involved. India has already been involved. Does Vladimir Putin report into our Prime Minister Narendra Modi? He does not. But he briefed him of the situation. Why? Because Russian and India, they have a very emotional bonding. Apart from the military deals, we also have a very unconditional relationship with Russia. At the same time, yes, Ukraine is also a business partner in terms of deals.
Yeah, no doubt. There is no comparison. As far as Russia is concerned, India buys 60% of its defense hardware from Russia. So, and you rightly mentioned about close ties, proximity, historic ties, which India has. Major Mohammed Ali Shah also live with us. Good morning, sir. Thank you for joining us on NewsX. We have some news coming in, one of various explosions, more and more news coming in which are heard all over Ukraine. We're also getting to know that Antony Blinken has spoken to Mr. Jaishankar. The External Affairs Minister has, of course, in very diplomatic words, all he has said is that I appreciate this call from the US. Very precarious, very tricky situation for India, isn't it, sir? When we speak of taking sides, very difficult situation. India very unlikely to take sides, antagonize any country. We have both sides, push and pull from Russia and the US. Really, what do you see? How do you see India's strategy going ahead?
Firstly, India is not about we will follow the policy of non-alignment. No. See, of course, we cannot take sides right now because of various reasons. First is, Russia has been a very, very dear friend of ours, and I'm talking about a bond which lasts for over 75 years. In fact, you talk about Bollywood movies, Prithviraj Kapoor, you talk about anything. In fact, you talk about our Prime Minister Rajiv Gandhi being assassinated, and Russians took it like a personal loss. They were always crying, and they have helped us regarding arms, they have been a very, very good defense partner with us. In fact, we have got the S-400 missiles from them, the new AK-204 after AK-47, AK-56, in fact AK-203, in fact AK-103 also we would be getting from Russia. So we have always been very, very good friends with Russia. In fact, President Putin's visit to India a couple of months back only speaks very highly of our relationship. Yet at the same time, in the year 1998, when India had also tested their nuclear power, which everyone, Project Shakti, in fact, everyone is entitled to have their own nuclear power. At that time, Ukraine had voted against us with 25 other members in the UNSC opposing the nuclear test by India. Nevertheless, Ukraine also is a dear friend to India. We have over 20,000 students studying in Ukraine, and at the same time, there is a lot of similarity between Russians and Ukrainians, especially among the East Ukrainians. So President Putin always says that they have a choice to choose which side they actually belong to. Now, also, if I take you back to 1991, before the disintegration of USSR, the president of USSR that time, Mikhail Gorbachev, his mother was Ukrainian. So they have a lot of similarity. In fact, they have marked their armored vehicles with a Z symbol to avoid friendly fire, because it's very, very similar, even the make of the vehicles. Now, when we talk about India's involvement in it, India's maximum involvement in it would be talking peace and nothing else. In fact, President Putin had put up a very, very firm tweet on Twitter yesterday that any nation which tries to involve himself or tries to come against Russia's action is going to face severe consequences which they have never faced in the history of their entire life. Reading that tweet itself, I was a bit paranoid. I was like, oh my God, what a solid message this is. I mean, not just for anyone, and of course, at the moment, China and Pakistan, there are only two nations which are blatantly, in a way, they're quite blatant, favoring Russia. Even Turkey, for that matter, Tayyip Erdogan, he has also given indication that he is not going to be supporting Russia, and Russia has expressed his disappointment toward that as well.
Yeah.
The Ukrainian ambassador to India yesterday said that Prime Minister Narendra Modi has very good ties with Russia, with President Putin, who has been the president over there for over 19 years, mind you.
But sir, as a defense expert, do you not think it's a little too late for mediatory talks? Because airstrikes are already underway, explosions are happening. You have, of course, these grim visuals coming from all over Ukraine. The Russian army is marching further and further inside of Ukraine as we speak. Obviously, diplomats are still hopeful, but do you still see India playing a mediatory role? Isn't it too late for that already?
Oh, well, I would say it's never too late. And if there is peace which has to be restored, I mean, at any peril, at any cost, no matter what, I think peace should prevail all over the world. Let me take you back to a bit of the history. All Russia was actually asking for was sovereignty, integrity of its own territory, because they obviously felt threatened that if, in case Ukraine, and it happened with Georgia in 2008, it happened with Crimea in 2014, because James Baker, the Foreign Secretary of the US, had given an assurance that not an inch would be now further extended from NATO, especially towards the European countries there. But in 4 phases, 14 nations were inducted into NATO, right? You take it from 2004 onwards and further on. And Russia was very worried about that. Russia was always saying, they had been putting their foot down that please do not induct any more. In fact, there was a time when Vladimir Putin, who has been the president for a very long time,
Yes.
he joked with the American.
I agree with you that it was the expansion of NATO, the non-implementation of the Minsk agreement, which had to a large degree antagonized Russia, but that still doesn't seem to be reason enough to invade into a country. And also, as a defense expert, how do you view Russia's side of the argument? Because Russia till date, interestingly, many would even say laughably claims that they're only interested in the rebel regions. They have no interest in capturing entire Ukraine, because the explosions which we are seeing, the invasion of the army, Russian army, which we are seeing in Ukraine, tells a very different story. As a defense expert, how do you read the developments which are happening on ground, sir?
You know, this is a very, very dangerous precedent. And you know, when the Russian president Vladimir Putin, in fact, again, before that, I'll tell you another similarity between Ukrainian and the Russian. Both of the head of states, both of the presidents are Vladimir's. In Russian, it is Vladimir. In Ukraine, it is Volodymyr. So that is the.
Help us understand really. How do you assess the situation? How do you see, you know, this war going from the current situation it is in, and do you see it escalating to a point where other world countries, like say the NATO, if not the US, gets directly involved in conventional warfare?
Oh, well, yes, it could lead to a proper conventional warfare, because, you know, as Russia says that they will not attack any civilian establishments, only military establishments. But let me tell you, the kind of weapons that are being used, the ballistic missiles, the strategic weapons, these are, well, the accuracy could be there, but yes, if we are all humans, and if there's a calculation error, a small half a degree can lead to miles, not kilometers, miles of difference. And what if the round lands elsewhere? Now, regarding NATO and expansion of NATO, and of course Russia had been waiting for all this while, and ultimately they had drawn a red line that, okay, in Georgia 2008, now, Ukraine now, and they had to draw a line. But at the same time, as you rightly said, it does not justify them to go and shed their hands in blood, and it's like someone who has to pay my rent for 8 months and the person hasn't paid my rent. So I go and murder that person. No, I will not. I will do all my best that I can. So yes, it is not justified. War in any case is not justified. Now when it comes to international organizations like the Quad, for example, which was primarily instrumental for curbing China's aggression in the South China Sea, or if we talk about NATO, or if we talk about UN, which people are saying, where are these nations which had promised Ukraine support initially? That US had promised support, the NATO alliance had promised support, but where are these nations when lives are being lost in Ukraine? And Ukraine, let me tell you, even though they may not be militarily as strong as Russia, no doubt, but they are outstanding at guerrilla warfare. Their soldiers are trained. They are the #1, in fact, you can say. And the AK-203 rifles which we are getting from Russia, also the same time, also would be somehow.
Yeah.
It's so ironical that you hit the enemy with their own weapon. It is ironical. We did that in Kargil in 1999. We took the enemy's weapon and we fired back at the enemy with their own weapon.
Well, absolutely, and it's not just you know, the guns and arms and ammunition. We also have the S-400s, a big consignment which we are expecting from Russia.